Welcome back. Well, as the first quarter of 2025 is winding down right now, let's get a review of what's played out in Nigeria's capital markets so far. Key trends that will shape the remaining quarters in 2025. We're going to find out what to expect. And joining us for that, we have Mr. Haruna Jallo Waziri, who is the MD CEO, Central Securities Clearing System, PLC. Joining me right here at the studio. It's great to have you, sir. It's been a while.
I know. It's always a pleasure to be here. But I'm glad that you're back on our floor.
Oh, yeah, we're back on the floor. Full time.
Excellent.
And, talking about the floor, a lot has played out already. And I'm wondering if you also feel this year is running really fast. Q1 is almost over. And I remember we were just saying Happy New Year a couple of days ago. How are you seeing the speed?
So when there is a lot of activity, sometimes time passes very quickly, and that's what we're seeing in our market. Essentially, the interest is significant. The amount of, if you like, order flow we're seeing, both domestic and international, has increased significantly compared to last year. Year on year, we've seen an increase in 37.5% or thereabout of our index growth last year. This year, we're seeing some momentum. Average trade is about 11-12 billion. Compared to quarter one of last year. And typically we start very slow in the quarter because budgets have to be approved, within either prop books or otherwise. Even the government, direction has to be properly defined for people to begin to come in. But we've seen some speed in terms of decision making to continue to trade in this market, and we've just begun to see some growth. Yeah.
Right, and talking about the first quarter now, what key trends have you seen play out in this quarter in the market?
So what we're seeing most importantly is that there's a rebalancing of portfolios by international investors looking at Nigeria as a destination, because they're seeing, first of all, the reforms that are continuously happening. We've seen, subsidies that have gone, stabilization of the currency by extension. I think Bismarck had mentioned that earlier, that if the currency stays within the band of 1,500 and 600, where it doesn't see a runaway, then people tend to plan with that particular number. And for them, what they want is stability. And because that stability has begun to creep in, and we're seeing consistency in terms of the reforms and also the activities that go around the reforms. So we're hopeful, and when they balance those two books, it tends to come to Nigeria.
Right, and talking about international investors, there was a time it was mostly, or I think that might still be happening, where it's just domestic, investors playing in the market. Some fund managers, I've spoken to, they've said Naira assets are looking very attractive, right now. Do you share that sentiment?
Absolutely. If you take $1 and come into Nigeria, the value you get for it is significant compared to if you say you take it to other emerging markets like Qatar, and all of those places. So they're seeing our assets cheaper than everywhere else. And if you look at our earnings per share, it comparative to other markets, is quite significant. And so there's significant value in Nigeria. What they were afraid of was the currency stability. And as we begin to see that, then you start seeing them plan Nigeria as part of their portfolio, certainly.
Right, and I'm sure you see the inflation numbers.
Yeah, it's
for
interesting.
February.
Absolutely, and I think we're looking forward to that because cost of living is quite high in Nigeria. Comparatively to 2 years ago, and it's burning into people's pockets. And once you have a higher cost of living, then consumers tend to spend less and then tend to not save more. And once you don't have savings, you don't see it transfer into markets. And we're glad that it's happening. And I think it's a good thing, if you ask me.
Right. So Q1, that's winding down. Q2, I'm sure, investors will be wondering what next, at this point. What are you seeing?
I'm excited around what's going to happen in Q2, especially when prices begin to come down. Especially when the currency stabilizes, especially when policies are defined and are very clear, and we know that they're going to be achieved or done. And that helps for planning within the context of the listed companies who are actually in Nigeria and producing, whether it's services or goods or otherwise. And if that happens, then you begin to see it interpret into those companies, and by extension, you're seeing more profitability. The banking sector is running away from everybody because of what they're doing in terms of performances. And then if you add, telcos and fintechs and consumer manufacturing, when you aggregate everything, it looks like it's going to be a good year. And investors tend to forecast what will happen in companies. So they price it today for tomorrow's value. And certainly next quarter, you're going to see a lot of that.
Right. And how is the CSCS, positioning for what's coming?
So, funny enough, CSA has always positioned ahead of what is happening. So, for example, one of the key things we're talking about is now accelerated settlement. And we had a call with the DG yesterday who gave his go-ahead to say, okay, we're at T+3. Should we move to T+1, which is where markets are? And, I keep giving this example everywhere I get an opportunity. I'm sure my son is very angry with me right now. He says that I don't want to participate in your market because I buy an asset, I wait 3 days before I get it. I sell it, I wait 3 days before I get my cash. So 6 days, if I go to Amazon, in the morning I buy an asset, or rather I buy some goods, I get it in the afternoon. If I don't like it, I return it. My money comes back. So why can't you do that? So I think that's significant for us from a heavy lift and preparing accelerated settlement, which means there will be, more order flow, there will be liquidity in the market more than we think. And all of that is driven by us and the regulator as well. And from a technology perspective, we've just launched our second version of what we call the Reg Connect. That's our connectivity between the registrars and ourselves in terms of the daily reconciliation that we do. That version is work, I kid you not, and I'm sure the registrars will tell you about it. So again, the APIs we built, we're connecting more people. The brokers are, instead of using the portal, they're now doing an STP through us, which means better efficiency. And I always say that in the morning the spreads in the market are wide, but then the confluence towards the afternoon, and that's why you see liquidity every time after 12 o'clock. Now imagine if you have those APIs, so all of the paperwork is not being done, right? It's being done automated. What you see eventually will be shrinking in the morning because they don't do much, and which means you're likely to see more liquidity.
Because it's quite interesting. You would mention that T+3, bringing it down to T+1, because I've heard some young investors that get quite frustrated with that.
Absolutely.
Because when you make a trade or you make a sell and you're trying to get into another asset, you have to wait 3 days before you can put that fund, and that's why I guess the crypto exchanges are quite attractive to them, because they can get settlements like that. So do you have a time frame where we can actually get?
So we're looking at 6 months maximum. In my mind, once we put all the things together, we should be able to do it in 6 months. And the DG is very, very clear about that. Let's go ahead and do it. Left to me, we'll go T+0. But again, there are consequences of that from the custodians, from the brokers, in terms of how they rejig their systems. But why not? I think we should think about atomic settlement, because that's what people are thinking about. The technology is there, the know-how is there. It's just for us to just move those elephants around us to get to where we want to be. Yeah.
All right. So definitely, we're still aiming for that $1 trillion economy, and we've heard experts say, come to the capital market, come and raise funds. The market is deep enough. But what's being done, at this point to contribute to this $1 trillion economy we're aiming for?
So in my mind, policy making and consistency of it is very important. Capital is shy if it doesn't like what's happening. So it's like water. When you throw it, it goes to the lowest point. Capital will find the lowest point of resistance and then perform. If we provide that particular low point, which are a couple of things, like I always say, ease of doing business is number one. Policies that are consistent. The environment where you have skilled workers who would help pursue the objective of those entrepreneurs. And of course, unlock that capital as much as is possible, whether it is from the banking side or from, international investors, or even personal angel investors and all of that, or even PE funds who will be interested in Nigeria. But guess what? One of the things we're doing also from a CSS perspective in our little corner is that, we're hosting the African Middle East Depository Association conference for the first time in Nigeria next month. So it's, I think, between 23rd, 24th, and 25th of next month. We're bringing in the whole world to take a look at Nigeria. And AMIDA is Middle East and Depository in Africa, and they come with a lot of other, what I call ecosystems that come to Nigeria. Nigeria is good for that. That's what part we're doing at CSCS. That conference will have everybody in the world, from people from Mexico to what's it called, Russia. In fact, the Russians are coming, surprisingly. And across, the ESA board is also going to be here, which is the International Security Service Association. Now, what we're doing is showcasing Nigeria to say, look, guys, we're ready to move forward. This is what's happening. And, that should help also from our own little corner to do it. But more importantly, I think, ease of doing business, consistent policy, a stable currency, and if we see inflation taper down completely, we'll be on the way.
Right, and talking about AMIDA, that's Africa Middle East Depositories Association. First time that's going to be hosted in Nigeria. You did say the Russians are coming, and major stakeholders. And we keep talking about integrating the markets in Africa and all of that. And you as an investor in Nigeria, you can buy a stock in Ghana and all of that. I know that's also in the works. But how is the CSES playing into all of that?
So I sit on the board of AMIDA as the vice chairman. The chairman is a Bahraini guy called Abdullah. One of the things that, as part of our initiative, is to see how we can integrate ourselves within even Africa, within the Middle East and Africa connectivity. But more importantly is the CSDs, which is what we are, tend to have a better collaboration than the exchanges, because the exchanges compete. We don't. And that's why it's easier for us to do it. And it translates to what we're doing at WACMIC, which is the West Africa Capital Market Integration Council, where we're actively involved in trying to integrate. Now, the key issue that we have in integrating in Africa, West Africa, is around currency exchangeability. All right, so if you go to Ghana as a CD, if you go to Nigeria as a Naira, if you want to cross-reference Ghana as CD and Nigeria, you have to go to dollar, go to CD, or CD, dollar to Nigeria. If we're able to remove some of those, if you like, barriers, it's easier for us to actually integrate. Is work being done? Yes, it is. Is ECOWAS really pushing it from a council perspective, especially the central banks? Yes, they are. But the political will has to be increased significantly to see how we can remove those barriers for us to be able to do.
And talking about barriers right now, we know the trade war, the tariff wars, that's happening out there in the global market. And today a tariff comes on, next thing it goes off, next thing is paused. How is all of this your expectation? When it plays into the Nigerian's capital market, are you seeing any risk there?
So for me, I hope Trump is not listening so that doesn't cancel my visa. I think it's madness to start a trade war. The only losers are actually consumers across any nation. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help global economy. But good enough, we are, if you like, for now, we're not part of that particular, if you like, madness. Let me choose my words properly. Nigeria is not part of it, and because we're not affected, it should not have any effect in the economy. If anything else, it should be advantageous for people to say, okay, what, maybe I should go and start manufacturing in Nigeria and then export it to the markets that are fighting. In some way or form, I think it might be good for Nigeria. I don't know whether it's short to medium term, but I think in the medium term, if it continues, we will likely see other people coming into markets like ours to begin to, avoid the tariff wars that are currently going on.
Right, definitely. We don't really need, tariff wars at this point.
As we are today, we don't need it, and we should avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we know the fears of the U.S. Fed, the fears of most of the central bankers now still trying to keep inflation globally moderate, and we're now seeing projections for the global economy. The latest one, we're seeing a deceleration there from expectations, I think from 3.1% to about 3.0%. That's for the global economy. They've also downgraded the growth expectations for the U.S. So with all of that, that definitely trickles down into emerging economies. So what are you seeing, going forward in 2025 for the Nigerian economy and the capital market here?
So China is key. China is seeing consumers stop spending, and so they are trying to accelerate, certain policies to bring back consumers into spending, because the fear is that, look, they're likely to go into a deflation because of what's happening, and that's not good for the economy. And the exports, the investments tend to have those significant impacts, according to us. But for Nigeria, to be honest, like I said earlier on, what is very important is for us internally to continue those reforms and continue them in a disciplined way. And more importantly, as we begin to do expenditure, the right expenditures are important. We should be very disciplined about revenues when they come in, than to, especially if oil prices go up, which we don't think will in the near future because of the trade wars that are going on. But I'm hopeful again, like I said, and it's about being disciplined and watching our expenditure and putting it in the right places. And I'm hoping that both the central bank governor and the Minister of Finance will keep doing what they're doing.
Right. And talking about putting money in the right place, I don't know if you saw that data about what Nigerian men spent when it comes to 2024. We're hoping though that money, finds its way to the capital market. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but that's a discussion for another day. Definitely.
I agree with you. I don't know where that source of data is.
Yes, that data is.
It's interesting to find out how they got that data.
Yes.
But I think the grey economy from that perspective has always been significant. We've always had a grey economy in Nigeria. And I remember when MTN came to Nigeria, there was another South African company, another Vodacom, that wanted to come and buy a license for GSM, and they took a look at our numbers and said that no Nigerian can afford more than 3,000 naira a month, or up to 3,000 naira a month for airtime, and the rest did, and their numbers were wrong, because we have a grey economy that supports the system, which is not being counted. I suspect that's one of them.
Right.
If you go to Lekki and see the number of buildings that are coming out and the people that are buying the property, they're not normal people that are part of what we count in our GDP, and that exists. So it's a resilient economy, if you ask me. And,
quite resilient, definitely.
We're going to see more.
All right, we're definitely hoping for the very best, going into the rest of 2025. But it was great having your perspective today, Mr. Haruna Jalo-Waziri, MD/CEO, Central Securities Clearing System PLC. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll find out what's going on in the global economy. John McQuarrie standing by for that. Just stay with us.